Hello, this is psychicpodcasts.com. I'm Psychic Sahar.
Today I'm very pleased to have with us Jacky Newcomb, who is one of the UK's leading angel experts. Jacky runs her own column as Mystical Agony Aunt and is known as the Angel Lady. A paranormal author, columnist, and afterlife communication expert, much of Jacky's work revolves around people's real-life experiences. Jacky, a very warm welcome to psychicpodcasts.com.
Thank you for asking me.
Now, your recent book, An Angel Saved My Life, was an inspiring collection of true stories from the other side, revealing how our guardian angels often intervene in our darkest hour. And you also have a new book, which is due out in November 2007, or is it November 2006?
It's November this year. So
this year.
2006, that's right.
And it's entitled An Angel by My Side. Before I ask you about the new book, I'd like to ask you, for our listeners who perhaps don't know, what is a guardian angel, or what is a spirit guide, and how do our guides and angels communicate with us?
I think different people see their guardian angels as different things, but traditionally a guardian angel is a being of light sent from God, and their particular role with humankind is sort of protection and in particular love. Our spirit guides slightly different. Spirit guides come from advanced human souls.
Right.
And they have a lot more information available to help us with. I always say your spirit guide is going to be great at helping you with things like if you're struggling to pay the mortgage, your spirit guide is going to understand that, whereas the angels don't. They don't understand that. Having not been human, they don't understand that sort of thing.
That's interesting.
Spirit guides, their job is to help guide us, basically. They understand the lessons that we've chosen to live on this particular lifetime, and they're there to help us to achieve those particular lessons.
Now, your last book, An Angel Saved My Life, has been very successful and received really raving reviews. What made you decide to write the new book, An Angel by My Side? Is it a follow-up?
The whole thing's been very exciting. And there's been a fantastic response to it, which has been a real thrill for me. I think people have kind of related to the fact that the stories are real people stories. They're experiences that normal people have had, people who don't necessarily or hadn't necessarily believed in angels or the fact that there might be an afterlife, and then had these phenomenal experiences. And I think that's what people have related to. People have read the book and kind of said, hang on a minute, something like that happened to me once. And I've got a lot of people have emailed me and sort of said they recognise similar things that have happened to them in their own life when they've read the book.
That's right.
It's been really exciting that that's happened.
What can you tell our listeners? What can they expect to find in the new book, and what makes it different from the last?
What I tried to do is I've included a lot more afterlife stories this time. So what I have is lots of spontaneous stories of communication from the other side. So rather than people go to visit a medium or a psychic to communicate with their loved one who's passed over, what I've tried to do is I've collected stories where those loved ones have come and visited on their own, if you like. They've come in dreams and visions. They've come in and they've played music boxes in the room. They've switched lights on and off and all sorts of things. And what I've tried to do is I've tried to sort of collect them together a little bit, organise them a little bit, and explain to the reader how each of these different types of phenomena occur, so that perhaps people can look for their own experiences and understand them a little better.
Now, you specialize in these spontaneous stories of communication from the other side.
Yeah.
And I really feel that very little is being written about them in the UK. What made you decide to write a book about this subject?
Well, what happened originally is I started to ask people if they would send me their angel stories. And what happened, they were sending their angel stories, but very often these experiences that they would call angel stories were different, in so much as that what was happening is their angel was their great-grandma or their auntie or their uncle who had passed over.
Right.
And they were calling these relatives their angels, which is fine. But I mean, the traditional sense, it's different. Our loved ones are different. But they were still acting in the role of more
like spirit guides. Yes,
more like spirit guides. In fact, there is a little difference in so much as I always find that our loved ones kind of can interfere a little bit because they're not supposed to, but maybe at a point in our life we're supposed to learn a lesson. You know, great auntie's going to come along and go, hang on a minute, you know, I don't want my granddaughter to get hurt here, and so they'll offer a warning sometimes when they're not supposed to. But it was exciting to be able to write more about those particular experiences.
So, Jacky, are you saying that it's the angel's job to intervene?
On occasion,
to help
yes.
us.
I mean, angels can intervene when it's not something that is part of our life lesson, I believe. So, for example, I think they can save a life when it's not our time to go. Obviously, if it is our time to go, you know, then what they do is they're there to collect us, or they're there to help us cross over and to make the crossing a little bit easier. But, I mean, I have many, many stories where angels have intervened and they have helped, sometimes in very subtle ways and sometimes very dramatic ways.
How can we tell if who we are communicating with is a relative, a deceased relative, or an angel? I mean, is there a difference in the communication?
Sometimes it's difficult to tell. I mean, sometimes we're not immediately aware. Sometimes we can tell, and I think it depends how much information that they give us. Perhaps when you're driving along in a car and you suddenly hear a warning voice tell you to slow down or to turn in a particular direction, it's likely that that voice might come to you as perhaps your grandma who's died, or a relative or a friend who's already crossed over. And then it makes it fairly easy for us to tell the difference.
Right.
Sometimes we get just a sense or a feeling that we're to do something different or to travel down a different road, and the voice isn't attached, and then it's a little bit harder to tell who that might be. But in all of these cases, you'll usually get a sense of love or a sense of great peace. There's always a very positive, loving feeling attached to that energy.
Right. Now, I found your first book, which I really enjoyed, An Angel Treasury. It's kind of like an encyclopedia of angels. And I very much enjoyed knowing the different kinds of angels and the different kind of jobs or assignments. And what I found really interesting also is that you've covered it from a Western aspect as well as Eastern aspects, which not a lot of authors tend to do that. And it kind of also, I think you mentioned there, that angels can help almost in everything except if it's our time to go.
Yes, and I think people always say to me, you know, is it okay if I ask my guardian angel to help with anything? And I would say ask away, because if they can't help, then they won't.
Right.
But if they can help, it would be a shame not to ask. But the most important thing is to ask.
To always ask.
Oh, absolutely. For them to be able to get involved in our life. In most cases, unless perhaps in an emergency situation, in most cases, we need to actually ask for their help. And I think this is why perhaps when people have had accidents and that sort of thing, when we just yell out help, maybe not to anybody in particular, that is when people have the most dramatic experiences involved in angels, where they actually see them perhaps, because they've actually shouted for help, and so the angels are able to then interfere or intervene and stop that particular thing from happening.
I know, for example, for my clients, you know, they often say, is it okay if I ask, you know, for help in a parking space? And I say yes. so no job really is too small or big, but your point is one should always ask, otherwise they cannot really intervene.
Do you know, I think sometimes people are worried because they feel as if they were to ask, say, a great archangel like Archangel Michael to help them with perhaps, say, paying their tax bill, that they worry that angel, they're taking that angel away from a more important task.
Right.
Maybe that angel would be better employed perhaps helping somebody who was in a war situation, for example. But it just doesn't work like that. I don't feel as if you use up your angel credit by, you know, asking for help with smaller things. And I think angels aren't bound by the same rules of time and space that we are here. So I think the angels can be in many places at once, and you know, just ask when and let them decide whether they can help or not.
I was going to add, do you feel that angels can multitask? So people mustn't really feel guilty, you know, asking for help or...
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it just to say they're not ruled by the same time scale that we are. And, I mean, they're made of a completely different type of energy to us. And it's very difficult for us to imagine that, you know, an angel might be sort of out in Brazil, South Africa, Australia, and, a little village in England, all at the same time doing different things. But it just seems that they are able to do that in my experience.
Yeah. Jacky, can you tell us some of the ways in which people are contacting their loved ones after they have died?
Yeah, lots of fun ways. They'll do very simple things like their flicker lights. And I know lights flicker anyway, but usually what happens is if you're thinking about that loved one at that particular time, you often feel a change in the energy in the room, and then the comes as a follow-on. So something else will happen, and then the light flickers. I myself have an uncle who does this regularly. He turns up at all of our family events, and we always have a flickering light somewhere in the room, and we always say, "Hello, Uncle Eric," and then it'll stop. So that's
we've just had a flicker. You just suddenly kind of went out and came back again. So I wonder if that's one of your...
That could well be him. That could be... that could well be Uncle Eric on the line.
And sometimes I feel, like clocks and watches. Do you feel that?
Isn't it?
Yeah.
Absolute classic situation. I mean, there are always the situations where the person's watch stops at the exact moment that they die. But I have other stories on my case files where a watch has started moving again when perhaps people in the room are talking about this particular loved one, or they pick the watch up and it starts.
Right.
Or a clock will suddenly chime when they're talking about that loved one, when it's not on the o'clock or sort of quarter past or half past the hour. It'll just suddenly go off for no reason. But of course the reason is, as we well know, is that person is trying to let you know that they're in the room. Clockwork items, that's another thing. They're great at playing about with clockwork items. Not just children's toys or wind-up clocks, obviously.
Yes. But
things like music boxes, brilliant. I had a great story where a lady was talking with her friends, and they were talking about our loved ones who have crossed over, and one lady said, my husband is always with me since he crossed, and he always lets me know that he's around. And the lady who owned the house said, well, my Fred's been gone for 20 years, and he's never done anything. And just at that moment, a music box started playing in the room.
Really?
And she looked around in astonishment and said to her friends, Fred bought me that music box, and that's the first time it's played since he died, because I've never wound it up.
That's amazing. So a change of temperature or a light flickering or music boxes or chimes going off, is that signs of communication?
Any number of things. Butterflies are often seen around the time that somebody has passed over. They often appear in the funeral cars on the way to or the way back from the funeral or at the graveside. Very often they seem to be caught in a house or in that person's room around the time of the crossing over. So that's something else that's very common, butterflies. And butterflies are signs of spirit, or seen as signs of spirit all over the world, actually. So that's
really?
Another one.
That's interesting, yes. Now, what does the future have in store for you?
Ooh, lots more exciting things. I'm already sort of working on
a new
other books.
Oh, fantastic.
There are just so many more stories that I want to share. And that's why I sort of feel drawn the most, really, is to write more about the afterlife communication stories. Anything with a sort of a positive twist, really. So very, very keen on getting those out. And
yes.
I constantly have so many amazing stories being sent to me. There's just so much I want to share with people about that. Because, of course, the more stories that I receive, the more I learn about the phenomena, and the more I want to talk to people and reassure them that life goes on, that death isn't the end.
Absolutely. I think that's an inspiring thought. Jacky, thank you very much for being with us. I look forward to reading your new book, which is due out in November 2006.
Thank you very much.
Now, for our listeners who would like more information on your workshops, books, or CDs, can we give them your website?
Yes, you can. They can reach me at www.angellady.co.uk.
That's lovely. Thank you very much, Jacky.
Thank you.